We're back with an Uplevel Dairy Young Leader who brings us wisdom beyond her years. Right after high school, Ytsje Andringa moved 12 hours away from home to Grand Rapids, Michigan to pursue a degree in nursing. But within 1 week, she knew where her heart was, and it was back with her family at Sunrise Dairy in Clear Lake, South Dakota. She stayed in Michigan for a year, which ended up opening up a whole nother set of opportunity for her to work at Swiss Lane Farms before returning back to step into a role managing calves, heifers, and so much more. Get ready to hear from Ytsje right here on the Uplevel Dairy Young Leaders podcast series. This is the podcast series for producers and professionals in the first 5 years of their dairy careers. I'm Peggy Cawtheen, and it's my mission to connect you with others who are like you, driven to make a difference and determined to do it in the dairy industry. And speaking of determined, this young leader will blow you away with her determination to do hard things and go after her dairy farming dreams every single day. She's the daughter of Dutch immigrants, oldest of 6, and a mother of 3. Hear about the challenges she faces as a young dairy producer, dealing with salespeople and managing employees 3 times her age. The one skill set she believes she must develop to be successful as a dairy producer, and hear a few fun silage truck driving stories from Ytsje as well. Enjoy this conversation in the Uplevel Dairy Young Leaders podcast series. Tell me about you, Ytsje.
So I grew up on my parents' dairy farm where I work at now. All through my life, it was chores. I learned the hard way. There was a couple years where I just complained, and I figured out, well, if I don't complain, I just get the job done, it's going to take a lot less time. So those years, I was like, man, everyone in school just gets to go home, play on their whatever. Some of them had electronics. And I have to go home and I have to feed calves. I was like, that is not fair. That's not fair. But in hindsight, I am so grateful that this is the way I grew up. Got into high school, was still helping on the farm, helped another dairy farmer just outside of Watertown, and then also started working at a nursing home. So kind of got into the healthcare thing, also still was working on the farm and helping another dairy farmer. So it was kind of in the weird stage of like, I kind of went back and forth. I wanted to be a farmer, I wanted to be a nurse, I wanted to be a farmer type of thing. Well, fast forward to graduation year, I was going to go to Lake area for nursing and then decided to go to Calvin University in Grand Rapids, Michigan for nursing. I like telling this story because it's pretty funny. But about a weekend, I was like, man, this city life is just not for me. It wasn't the nursing classes that like drew me away from that kind of stuff, but it was like, this city life is not for me. I got super homesick. All I had known my whole life was farming to some degree. And now I was stuck in a dorm room in the city with people that were not like me. So about a week after I moved to Grand Rapids, I started looking for jobs and came across Swiss Lane Farms. I applied for cropping operator, so driving silage truck. So the first time I went in and met with Annie and Jared, and we started the interview, and Annie's like, well, there's always a spot in dairy discovery, volunteer, feed calves, and Jared was asking me questions, and like I had driven silage trucks since I was probably middle school at my family farm. She seemed a little hesitant, but Jared's like, I think you know what you're doing, gave me his phone number, and off we went. So the first day came, and I mean, they were all very welcoming. It was so much fun, and I called my dad, and I was like, I got a job, and you'll never guess where. And he goes, driving silage truck for a dairy farm.
No! How did he know?
Right, well, he's like, you're my daughter. I know you. So that was pretty funny.
Yeah, that is really funny. So, okay, so here you are, you make this big move far from home. You're in the city, you're just getting your feet under you for nursing and starting nursing classes. And you can already tell that this isn't quite your place. These aren't quite your people. And so you find your people, and just so happens to be at Swiss Lane. And anybody that listens to Uplevel Dairy has probably heard Tommy Ersch on with us. He's one of my regular guests and always has fun things to share. But that's Swiss Lane. That is where you, at 19 years old, applied to drive silage truck. And then did they call you back? What happened next?
So the first day I rode with one of their guys for a day, and I think it was more like a working interview, I think is the process that Swiss Lane had, just to see like, oh, does she really know what she's talking about, or is she just, lying to her face and says she can drive silage truck, gets in a silage truck and ends up in the ditch or something like that. So after the working interview, he still called me back, so came back, drove silage truck, and he kept me the whole season and then some. So, I guess it went well.
At this point, so you're working at Swiss Lane, you're driving silage truck, you're starting to do some other things there, but you're also in nursing school at the same time.
I knew fairly quickly after starting at Swiss Lane, I was like, so going to nursing school was kind of a backup plan to farming. In case the whole farming thing doesn't work out, I have 5 siblings, so if they all wanted to come back to the farm, plus myself, would be quite a tough dynamic. So I was like, well, I do like healthcare, but then quickly found out after starting at Swiss Lane that if you're not passionate about something, don't do it. If you don't want to work a day in your life, find something you love doing, and then you don't work a day in your life. So I found out pretty quickly after that, but I told myself I need to finish out the year. It was pretty much just generals at this point. And then COVID happened, spring semester. And then in the meantime, I had a couple babies. So that kind of held things up. And then I finished school just this past year with a dairy business management degree.
Wow. Okay. So you're also a mom now too then?
Yes, I have 3 kids, a 3-year-old girl, a 2-year-old boy, and an almost 1-year-old boy.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So a lot happened in the last 4 years. And in the middle of that, at some point you decided that South Dakota was calling you home.
Yeah. So in the meantime, with all the kids and everything going on and my passion being dairy, I moved back and started back on the farm here with my parents.
Fast forward a few years, you've got babies of your own, and you're taking care of how many baby calves now?
We have about 150 to 200 on milk. And then I think our heifer inventory is about 14 to 1,600.
Okay. And you oversee heifers as well?
Yes. Yep. And if you ask me what my job title is, I would say it depends on the day. Because sometimes I get pulled into a silage truck. Sometimes I'm in the parlor. Sometimes I'm treating cows. Sometimes I'm doing heifers. And sometimes I'm moving cows, moving heifers, trucking. I think it's so different every day. But that, I think, is so fun.
But somehow it seems like you always get sucked back into the silage truck.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think every farm has that struggle. Come silage time, like you have your full-time employees and now you need people to drive silage trucks. So as a farmer's daughter, they're always like, well, here's the gas pedal, here's the brake. I think you could figure out the rest. It's always a heavy need at that time of year. So
yeah. Well, and you must be darn good at it because it sounds like you keep getting hired and can't get fired from it. So
right. Yeah. Or there's just that much of a shortage of silage truck drivers that they keep asking me back.
Okay. So real quick, do you have any really good silage truck driving stories that you can share with us?
Yeah, I have 3 stories that come to mind. So one was here at the home farm in high school. My family is pretty well known for running out of gas quite often. So my dad and I are exceptionally well at running out of gas. So my grandpa, who now has been passed away about 10 years ago, he had this it's an old cement truck. So there's no, it's a cab over truck, no shifting, no AC, nothing like that. And that's kind of where we all get put at first because you can't really screw anything up. So I think I ran out of gas 5 times that silage season, which in the moment, I don't think anyone was very happy. But looking back, I have a picture of the truck in the middle of the intersection.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
It's funny now, but looking back, I probably would have been pretty upset had I been my dad at the time. And then at Swiss Lane, driving silage truck, it would have been 2019. The fields were so wet. So we had the silage trucks, and then we had a pull tractor in the field. And we came up to this field that was very hilly, like a lot of fields in Michigan are. And we were going down this pretty steep hill into this bottom part, and then there's a steep hill to get back up. Jared was the one running the chopper at the time, and I looked at each other, and he just kept going, and I looked over at Michael, who was running the pull tractor, and I looked at him, And I was like, there's no way I was going to make it out. And everyone, like, we all had the same thought because we all looked at each other like, what's going to happen? Well, I shifted it up a couple gears, hit the gas pedal, went through the bottom, flew out of my seat, hit my head on the ceiling, came back down. And there was a couple trucks around watching. And I made it back up that hill, and that one got me out of my seat.
Literally. So these stories are great, Ytsje, because they say so much, not just about your truck driving skills, but really about your just bold attitude and courage to just like go out and do the thing and not be afraid to do things that other people might question you or doubt you about. Is that just kind of how you roll? Have you always been bold?
That's not how I've always been. And it kind of has gradually grown. Like now, just this last Dairy Expo where I met you, I thought to myself, well, I'm never going to meet anyone. I'm never going to learn anything if I don't just get out there. If I stay behind closed doors, I'm never going to learn anything. I'm never going to meet anyone. And you're just going to sit here and, it's just yourself. Getting out of my comfort zone, moving 12 hours from home kind of was a big step.
So you just learned to just give yourself the extra push and do it. Just go do the thing.
If you don't take any steps forward, you're never going to get anywhere. And you got to chase your dreams because your dreams won't chase you.
Oh, yes. Is that a country song? It sounds like a country song. And so going back to the dream, you talked about nursing school, but you also knew where your heart was. And so what is your dream? When you really think about how you want to spend every day, how you want to raise your kids, and where you want to be 10 years from now, 15 years from now, what's your dream?
So I would say I really look up like the life that my parents have, working on the farm, only working on the farm, raising kids that have to work for what they have, just that strong work ethic. I look at them and I think to myself, that is what I want. So to get there, it's going to be a lot of work, but big dreams come with big challenges as well. So if anyone asks me, I guess my big goal would be to eventually take over the farm from my parents, whether that be with siblings or without siblings. That's to be determined. My youngest brother is 8, like I said, so we still have a lot of years of figuring that out, but it'll come with time.
It sounds like your dream is very crystallized in your mind.
Yes. Yeah.
When you became a mom, did it make it crystal clear, like more than before?
Yes. And even more so because at the time I lived in town. Like, I guess it was just outside city limits, but we still had neighbors. And I was like, I don't want to raise my kids just coming home and being like, here's the backyard and here's the house and that's your limits. I grew up with the dairy farm. Like, the dairy farm was the playground pretty much as a child. So I thought, like, this is not how I want to raise my kids. And it just became even more clear at the time.
And that speaks to why you just push yourself, like we talked about, to take action, to do the thing. And so now you're on the dairy every day and you're managing calves, you're managing heifers, and you're doing a billion other things. And of course, driving silage truck. But what part of being on the farm brings you the most satisfaction in a day?
That question has so many layers to it. So I would say the every day is different, and that is so much fun. Some days you go home, you hit your head against a wall, and you think, why in the world am I doing this? Other days, we hit some of our goals. It's great. Like, we all work together as a team to reach the same goals. And just that, the atmosphere of the farm is just, I would say, so much fun. The hard labor that you put in, and then the crops come off the field, and it's like we did all this hard work and praying and waiting, and we got where we wanted.
When you're passionate and you want things done well, it is hard. And I'm guessing that's something that is a challenge for your parents too, because they wouldn't have left the Netherlands and gone to Canada and come to South Dakota if they weren't driven and didn't want to have excellence in their own lives. You talked about your vision for the future and how you want to raise your kids. When you really think about all of the great things that were part of your upbringing, what do you want to be different in your daily life, your family life, your management of the dairy? Like, what are you willing to let go of when you look ahead?
looking at my parents and how hard they work, like that is so inspirational to me. But I also have children of my own now. And it's like finding the happy medium between how much energy and time you put into the farm versus how much energy and time you put into being a mom. And all the other things like the friendships and the faith aspect of your life, all those things. Like that podcast that you and Tommy did, that just like, that was a great podcast. And I would highly recommend that to anyone that's in any sort of like ownership, leader, I mean, everyone in general. But that just was like, wow, that really just put a perspective on all the feelings that I'm sure a lot of dairy farmers feel. So I mean, when I was in sports, my parents came to maybe a couple games because they were so busy working. And I'm like, in hindsight, like that's just how it had to be. Like it didn't hurt my feelings because I knew that that's what they had to do. But now that the dairy industry has changed as a whole and everything is just shifting into a completely different management style, just the labor is completely different. I want to take that opportunity and spend more time with my kids because my daughter is already 3 years old. It feels like just yesterday I was bringing her home. So it's just crazy how fast the time goes. And I would say that's a big thing as a mom now, to find more time and to put your priorities in line with what's really important.
You have a lot on your plate right now, but it hasn't stopped you from thinking about more of what you want to do in your career, what you want to do with the dairy, how you want to have an influence and an impact on your kids. And as I put all the pieces together of your story and we think about these incredible experiences that you've had there have to have been also some challenges that have come along the way. So when you sit back and you think about these early years of your professional career in the dairy business, what's one of the biggest challenges that just really have come to surface for you?
So the things that stick out to me is I'm now a 23-year-old female in the dairy industry. You have people that come by, like sales reps, for example, and they're like, well, who do we talk to? And I say, I mean, you can give the information to me, like my mom, dad, and I, and they sit there and they're like, you just get the vibe that they think, well, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a female. You're 23 years old. They're probably used to talking to guys that are 40 or so years old, for example. So then they come here and it's like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. But you really have to just think to yourself that this is what I want to be doing. I have the knowledge and there's a reason that I'm here today. And you just have to remind yourself that you can't let those people determine how you feel about yourself and determine how you feel about your passion. So I would say that would be one thing. And then now working into more of a, I would say a leadership role, a manager position, being in charge of people. That is so humbling. The first, I would say half a year to a year, it was very humbling to tell people twice your age, people who have been here for 5 to 10 years, what to do and how to do their job. They look at you and similar to being a female in the dairy industry, you don't know what you're doing. What are you doing telling me how to do my job? So I think that was very humbling. And I really had to learn how to overcome the self-confidence thing. Yeah. And then on top of that, in the dairy industry, we all know that there's a diverse workforce. So I would say the language barrier had also been a very hard stepping stone, I would say, or roadblock. In high school, my parents pushed for Spanish, and I thought, I'm never going to use that in my life. Why in the world would I take Spanish class? So I went against what they said, and I didn't take Spanish, and now coming back to the farm, man, do I wish that I would have taken Spanish. Google Translate has been very helpful, but I thought, well, if I want these guys to respect me and to be able to connect on a more personal level, I need to do something about the language barrier. And I can't change what they do or what steps they take to overcome that, but I can change what I do and how I decide to overcome that. So I just recently, the beginning of April, signed up for Katie's Spanish class through Advocate. And I was just at a GPS conference where Tommy was, of course. Somehow we always come back at the same place. And we were just talking with a couple other people, and he told me something that will probably stick forever. He told me, you have to tell yourself, no matter what, this is going to happen. I thought about that pretty long and hard, and I thought, no matter what, I'm going to learn Spanish by Dairy Expo of 2025. So I emailed her and I asked when the next Spanish class was. And she said there was one opening up at the beginning of April. So I'm taking a Spanish class for that right now.
So now you're in, no matter what.
Right. Yeah.
That Tommy, he always has some good wisdom, doesn't he?
That is what I thought too. Yeah.
I want to revisit a couple things that you talked about, Ytsje, when you talked about these challenges. And the first one you talked about was people coming to the dairy, and you feel that judgment, and you can tell by the look on their face or the words that come out of their mouth that there's just, that judgment, or maybe not. Is it like not being taken seriously? Is that kind of how you describe it?
Yeah, I would say that, or they just want to get their point across and then leave because I don't know anything anyway.
I know there are a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are on the industry side, right? And that might be in those roles. So here's the thing is you get to choose who you do business with, and you have options. And you also have a voice at the table with your family, with your parents, and making decisions. How does that impact the bigger picture for the opportunity for that individual or that company to do business with you and your family?
I would say we definitely look at other options. And if I get the feeling, my mom most likely does too. And I don't have as big of a voice at the table as my mom does. So if she thinks the same thing, like, you're pretty much off the table if that's how you come here. It's my mom, I, and my dad. So two of the three people are females. So we have options. Most likely you're going to get thrown off the table. And that's just the way it is. If there's no respect, respect is a huge thing when you're doing business with other people. So if there's no respect, then how is there trust or anything else in that business relationship?
Respect is that foundation for trust. And that fundamentally is part of the other challenge that you talked about. And that was how humbling of an experience it's been for you to learn how to manage people. And here again, it seems to be a recurring situation for you where you're in circumstances with people much older than you, whether it was driving silage truck with a crew of men in their 50s or being back on the dairy with people that have been there for a really long time, probably watched you grow up. Some of your longer tenured employees are just people that in general are older than you. So when you really think about what has made a difference in your ability to learn how to manage people? Well, managing people for one is hard, but then we're going to layer that with managing a completely different age demographic and just that type of relationship, which has to change when you're in a different role than being the kid that's running around the farm. So what has helped you to step into your new you at the dairy?
So I just have to remind myself quite frequently what my goal in life is, where I want to be, and thinking to myself, if I just sit here and I feel sorry for myself because these people are making fun of me, they're not listening to me, I'm never going to get anywhere. So I just have to remind myself, these are my goals. This is what I really want in life. These are my passions. And this is how I have to get there, and overcoming and being humbled. If that's all part of it and that's what it takes, then that's what I'm going to do and how I'm going to get there. And there are days where it is so hard. I can sit here and tell you that I've been humbled, but I'm overcoming it. But there are days that it is so hard. I go home and I put my head down and I'm like, this is so hard. But if you're not going to do hard things in life, then the hard things is what makes you you. So the next day you get up and you think to yourself and remind yourself, these are my passions, these are my dreams, this is where I want to be, and go get it done.
If there is one skill that you are going to need to be successful as you step into higher levels of management and ownership on your dairy, what would it be?
I would say being better at the HR thing of the business. My parents growing up, they grew up in the Netherlands, 60 to 80 cows. So as a family, you just did all the work yourself. Well, now the whole dairy industry is evolving into this 1,000+ amount of cows, just an insane amount of cows. And that comes with a bunch of labor. So if you want to run the business, there has to be people under you that are working with the cows, with the machinery, doing all the daily things that if you had a smaller farm, you would just do yourself. So, I mean, good employees are hard to find. So being able to retain those employees and giving them the kind of motivation as the leaders or the owners of the business, I think is very important. And they are what run the business.
So you really see that people side, the HR side, as the key to the success of your future.
That is a big piece of the puzzle, because without those employees, I mean, we'd be scrambling. We'd maybe get 200 of the 1,800 cows milked a day because it's just myself and my parents. But without those people, we wouldn't be anywhere. So I think the whole dairy industry has changed as a whole. So instead of like my parents doing all the work on their farm, it's just there's a lot more people, and it's their life too. So just finding and managing that effectively, efficiently, all of the things, I think is something that every day I'm working on. Just walking in and saying good morning, that just makes all the difference. I guess saying good morning isn't a skill, but as a leader, that's kind of what it has to come to, because the people that are working for you want to be happy as well. And they want to push towards goals. They want to do the things. So just all the dynamics that come with the whole employee thing, the HR thing, like, it's so very important.
For others in the first few years of their careers in the dairy industry, you're only 23, but it's more like 33. But if you could give advice to someone in those early stages of their career, which you're in also, what would it be?
I would say take everything that happens, or every circumstance, every person you meet, every new day, as an opportunity. I think every person that you meet, you could learn something from. Every hard thing that you go through, you can learn something from. Every good thing that happens, you can learn something from. And if you don't know the answer, there's always someone who does. Just take everything as an opportunity to learn, to better yourself, to question yourself, just all the things. Everything is an opportunity. God gives us a new day every day, so make it an opportunity and learn something from it.
Yeah, and that's what you've done, is make those opportunities, and they have taken you to new places. They've brought you right back to where your heart was in the first place.
Yeah, my dad says it was like a boomerang. He threw it out and it came right back.
Oh, well, you have shared a lot of really good stuff, a lot of powerful thoughts, a lot of wisdom that is far beyond your years, some inspiration, motivation. I'm inspired and motivated just by getting to talk with you today. And so as we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
If you don't take the first step, you're not going to get anywhere. So get at it, get moving, and go get it done.
And I can tell that is your motto, and that's what you do every single day. You just heard from Ytsje Andringa from Sunrise Dairy in Clear Lake, South Dakota. And if you're like me, you have been inspired by the wisdom of this young dairy producer far beyond her years. And I hope that it is sinking in with you too. Thank you for listening to this episode in the Uplevel Dairy Young Leaders series. And if you like this episode, make sure you hit a rating or review and let me know so that we can keep bringing you more of these young leaders and up-and-comers in the dairy industry.